I see you I stalk you on Instagram sometimes, girl. Sometimes I see you in the gym. I'm like, yep, she's lifting some nice weights over there. That's when we think about resistance training
Yeah.
in particular, but there are many other ways. But resistance training is a really beautiful, natural way to drive up our own levels of testosterone. The more muscle mass you have, the more T you
Mm-hmm.
need or require to maintain it.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things? I think about almost like a trident. I think of nutrition, I think of movement, and then I think of stress, management or mitigation, if you will. What are some of the things, maybe from each of those buckets, that are very important for you when you're counseling a patient who is either in perimenopause, as I am, I'm
Mm-hmm.
46 now, in perimenopause, it's coming up for me, or someone who is in menopause or postmenopausal? What are some of the things that are important, or let's say required, for her in terms of the way that she is moving her body, the way that
Mm-hmm.
she is showing up in her life?
Yeah, I kind of like have two buckets when I talk to my patients who are going through perimenopause and menopause, is that there's menopause and then there's aging, right? And so they have a
Right.
lot of
Right.
overlap, but they pretty much can be looked at two different entities. And the reason why that is so important is because we can't neglect what our body just does biologically in aging. Now, going back to what we need to do as far as lifestyle changes, behavioral modification as we're aging and going through menopause. So with menopause, you're going to get that decline in the estrogen and the testosterone. And that starts to lead to this like cogwheel of effect and how it affects our muscle. And I'm very big on talking about muscle and lean muscle mass is because our skeletal muscle significantly declines as we start to go through perimenopause. But what muscle is really important for is utilizing glucose, right? And so when we talk about this kind of car assembly of how our body responds to things, is that if we still are absorbing glucose, but the one part that really uses that energy source is declining, that's where we start to see this shift in metabolic diseases, in heart health, in increased risk of diabetes and cholesterol. And that's why I'm like, it is so imperative that we use our weight bearing activity and our weight training to build the muscle back, to kind of stave off this decline in muscle, because it's so key in how we start to show up for ourselves longevity and functionality wise. It leads to how we're able to utilize glucose, but it contributes to bone health. One of the main reasons why women, when they get older in their 70s and 80s, have decreased quality of life is because of falls. And so, our bone health, if we don't have strong muscles to kind of stabilize our bones, then it's going to contribute to more falls because of our balance is off, but also it's not stabilizing the bone. And then also, when we look at insulin and glucose ratios, as we start to age, our organs become more insulin resistant. And that has to do with because more glucose is around and the body's like, I don't know what to do with all this glucose. The liver's like, I can't even store anymore. There's already enough here. The muscle's like, well, there's no more of me, so I can't even utilize it. And so we have this imbalance between insulin and glucose, which leads to metabolic, how we metabolize, what our body's going to do with that. Now there's too much glucose around, it just converts it to fat. So do you see how, like, through this like chain of events, we start to see the body is like, I'm kind of giving up here because I don't even know what to do anymore and I don't have my functionality. So I always want people to look at themselves holistically as a whole unit rather than just one individual organ system, because they all talk to each other. And so that's the beauty of getting someone through a really good perimenopausal, menopausal phase, is saying, how would you like yourself to show up both with quality of life and your functionality in your 70s and 80s? And I let them answer that. And if they're able to answer it in a way where I'm like, okay, let's start the work now, it goes back exactly to what you just said. It's the hard work, but it's the worthy work.
Yeah. And sometimes, and I say this with love, sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
the women in our community just need a little bit of tough love. It's like the results that you want is in the work that you're avoiding.
Yeah.
I know that heavy weights, I know that lifting weights is hard work. I know when your muscles are like, please stop contracting. I don't want you to squat anymore. I don't want you to lunge anymore. It can be very painful, right? It can be,
Mm-hmm.
the lactase, all the metabolites are building up and, your muscles are screaming at you, but it's the adaptation,
I
right?
was just about to say that.
Right? It's the adaptation, and that's what makes you stronger.
Because you know what our body's really good at? Adapting. And so
Yeah.
all of a sudden, what you've gotten yourself to, whether it's weight training or eating better or movement or balance, then all of a sudden that becomes your level. And then you raise the bar, and then your body will adapt, and then you raise the bar. So don't shortchange yourself. Give yourself like the highest goal that you can reach and set out to attain it. And your body can actually do it. It's, just being kind of like going back to like my undergrad years in biology when you're learning biology. The body is amazing. It's amazing what the body can accomplish when you give it the ability to do it, but also believe in yourself that you can accomplish it.
When did you start lifting weights, and what does your current routine look like?
Yeah, I started lifting weights probably in my early 30s. I was a very big proponent of it. Before, I was very much like more of a runner and did a lot of cardio. In my 30s, I still did a lot of cardio, but started to increase my weight training. And now I would say in my 40s, I've reverted more to like 80-20, weight training, cardio 20%. And so my routine right now is that I do more weight training. I probably do it 3 to 4 times a week. And I will put in cardio maybe 2 of those 4 times. So about 50% of the time I'll do in either rowing or cycling and or running. But most of my time is spent with weight training. I do a lot of HIIT routine as well, and kind of increase cardio and change kind of your heart rate throughout the entire workout. But my goal really is to increase the amount of weight that I can lift over time. And I would say I'm not perfect at it, because sometimes if I'm traveling and I take maybe a few days off from weight training, then I do kind of have to start back, right, from where I was. So, because I want safety involved with that and I don't want to injure myself. So instead of just continuing where I am, sometimes I know I listen to my body and I'm like, I got to go down a few pounds and then I'll get back to where I was.
That's like an intuitive deload week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I sort of have that every 7 weeks. I'm like, this week is just going to be a lighter week. I just need it. I'm tired. I'm run down from the program or life or whatever. So I love that. That's wonderful. And you mentioned HIIT training.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a lot of conversation around what type of cardiovascular work perimenopausal and menopausal women need. I think that there's some proponents or some individuals who say we don't need any cardio. We already have a lot of type 1 fibers, no zone 2. And then there's people who think, no, you got to train your top end, the VO2 max, the HIIT training, as you mentioned, and the base, right? The zone 2, the zone 1 training. I tend to fall in the middle. I think we need both. I think you need to be training the bottom end of your cardiorespiratory capacity and the top end. I think VO2 max is a really good predictor of longevity and how well, I shouldn't say longevity, your health span.
Yeah.
How healthy you're going to live over the years that you have. And again, HIIT training, sometimes, psychologically, that it's on the calendar, and you get more and more agitated the closer that HIIT training session gets, and you try to talk yourself out of it. But then afterwards, you're like, wow, I'm so strong. I'm so happy I didn't skip out on that.
Another reason I love HIIT training is because in that I will work with, in the exercises that I do, mobility and movement and functionality. Because in weight training, obviously, I will lift heavy weights. So I'm really focused on my posture and stability and getting to the weight that I would like to. But what I love in those intervals where I'm able to, whether it's running or whether it's doing sprints, is I really want to make sure that my balance and the functionality of stretch and how I move my body is still intact. So, and the reason why I say that and encourage it is because when we're older, yes, you have strong muscles that can keep you stable, but you also have to do a lot of course correction with balance and the ability that if you do trip and or fall, your body has the quickness and the agility to now thwart off that fall, which can lead to then the fracture. And so I do like the ability of, like, when you see older people who are able to do like planks, push-ups, burpees, that is showing another side of your body and what it can do in functionality while still increasing your muscle mass to give you the strength that you need. So I'm a proponent of both.
Yeah, and type 2 is you're training your power and your explosivity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So with weight training, we are still training those type 2 fibers, but you're not I guess it depends on how you perform the concentric. I tend to perform a really slow eccentric, so really long on the, let's say if you're doing a bicep curl, really long on the elongation part, and then I'll try to explode up. So there is some power there,
Right.
but you're also, with something like a burpee or a sprint, you're also working into your point, the tendinous, the tendinous components of the joint. You're working in your proprioception because there's a lot of very quick movement, right? And that's very important. You mentioned falls. I think that that's also really important because you can't really, with an osteopenic or an osteoporotic bone, you can't really supplement your way out of that. I mean, you can, there's like vitamin, there's people take calcium and vitamin D. You're going to work a little bit on the cortical bone there, but the whole point of an osteopenic or an osteoporotic bone is the loss of the cancellous bone, which is like the bone in the middle, like that spongy trabecular where the red, the bone marrow is produced. And you can take, bisphosphonates. I don't know if you've ever prescribed that. I mean, they
Very
do.
rarely.
I mean, they work, but then again, like that area under the curve, like you can't really take them long term. If you take them longer than, I don't know what the timeline is. I think it's 4 or 5 years.
It's 5 years, yeah.
5 years. Then now you are increasing your rate for fracture. So it's like, why don't we just go for and just start off with walking. Walking for me is the most underrated exercise. I put a backpack, I put a rucksack on the back. Weighted backpack. I did one this morning, just like a nice, get some sunshine. I do a walk around the block. Takes me like 30 minutes to kind of go around my block. I get in my 3,500 steps or so. I do that twice a day. And it's just an easy way to kind of get in some, and if that's where you're just starting, it's accessible to everyone. It's cheap. All you need is like a pair of trainers.
You know what I also tell some of my patients who are a little bit hesitant to start something in that capacity is just climbing stairs. Do you know how much like you can get? You get agility, you get movement, you get joint lubricating the joints, and then you also get
very complicated movement.
It is.
It's very complicated. Squats, climbing stairs, these are very technically, I mean, I know that we all climb stairs. We're like, whatever she's talking about. But if you think about the biomechanics and the firing pattern, it's actually a very technical movement.
It's great.
And it is something that you lose with time, right? It's like the whole, can you get up off the floor without using your hands test, right?
Can you? Have you done it?
Yeah.
I mean, I can, but I think I put so much effort into it because people put it as a challenge. So then I'm like, oh my God, can I not do this? And then I'll do it. I'm like, oh.
And then you psych yourself out.
I'm like, oh, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah, we used to, in the clinic, we would, our geriatric patients, we would get them to stand up from a chair without using their hands. So they couldn't use the wall or like the little counter behind where the chair was. For younger patients, we'd get them on the floor. Can they get up off the floor without using their hands? And then if they were really fit, we'd get them lying on their back and say, okay, get up now to a standing position without using your hands. Yeah. So that was kind of the more advanced one. And, you kind of wobble around the core, there's core there, there's proprioception, there's, ankle mobility, there's foot mobility, there's, all of that. There's like the quads are stretched out, the hammies are stretched out, the glutes got to fire, all that stuff, which is important for, as we age, falling, as you mentioned, I want to get down on the floor with my grandkids.
Yes.
I want to be able to play with them and get back up after. So,
yeah. No, I look at it as lifestyle. I ask patients, do you want to be able to play with your grandkids and get on the floor and back up off the floor? Do you want to be able to be at home and be able to stock your cupboards, carry in your groceries, climb the steps up to your front door? And when you sometimes look at it that way, you're like, those are simple things that I want to do. And I'm like, they sound simple, but let's make sure that you can still accomplish them as you start to get older.
And maybe, you're fabulous and you're traveling all over the world, you're retired and you want to be able to put your, your baggage in the overhead bin and not ask for someone's help to do it, right? Or get it down from the overhead bin once you've arrived at your destination. I think about those things as well.
Yeah.